I told you guys in the summer, I thought layoffs would speed up right before Thanksgiving and cool down in December. And it looks like I was right. November had the most layoffs than we've seen all year. So I can't read off the whole list for you. I have the top 5 cities with the most layoffs, plus information about debt in those cities so you can get a better idea of how the startup bubble is bursting and what cities will be the most affected. The first city being Los Angeles. Now, California ranks number 14 in the highest credit card debt in the nation, with an average of $6,736 in debt. The housing market has dropped 40.8% year over year for the number of purchases for single family homes. So almost in half in LA particularly. And LA has been a tech hub since the early 2000s, so this is not the first crash that they've had. It is a mega city. Starting off with Cloud Kitchens laid off an unknown amount. Mythical Games, a crypto company, laid off 10% of staff. SADA, 11% of staff, their second layoff. Avant Stay, which is like an Airbnb, laid off 22% of staff, and Science 37 laid off 17% of staff. Next, we have Seattle as the number 4 city. Now, Washington ranks 21 in credit card debt with $6,480 average credit card debt. The housing market has fallen 28.4% year over year for the number of single family homes purchased. So not as painful as other cities on the list. And Seattle has been a tech hub since the 90s, around the same time as the Bay Area. It just didn't grow as fast as the Bay Area. The first layoff is NanoString with 10% of staff. Fly Homes, another Airbnb, 40% of staff. Redfin, 13% of staff. OfferUp, 19% of staff. Now, Amazon laid off only 3% of staff, but that was about 10,000 people, and Inspectify, an unknown amount of staff. Number 3 in the list is actually Boston. Now, Massachusetts ranks number 10 in credit card debt with an average of $6,942 per person who has debt. The housing market has fallen 40.8% year over year for the number of sales on single family homes, and it has officially been a tech hub since the early 2010s, so this might possibly be the first time Boston is experiencing a tech crash. Help Scout, a remote company, laid off an unknown amount of staff. Rubis Therapeutics laid off 82% of staff. Repertory Immune Medicines laid off 50% of staff. Phase Medicines laid off 100% of staff. They went out of business. I want to jump in and say I've seen a ton of biotech and biopharma companies on my layoff list the entire year. So there's definitely a trend there that healthcare startups are not going to be stable moving forward into the next year. But we have Wista laid off 20% of staff. Pear Therapeutics laid off 22% of staff. That's their second layoff. Before it was only 9% of staff. And Salesify, 11% of staff. Now, number 2 ranking city shouldn't surprise you too much. It is New York City. New York ranks number 9 in the highest credit card debt with $6,973 per debtor. The housing market changes year over year has gone down 28.4% for the number of sales of single family homes, which is not as bad as the other cities, let's be real. And New York has been a tech hub since tech became a thing. We have Benetago Group, 14%, Varonis, 5% of staff, Ribbons, 85% of staff, that's actually a recruiting company, Own Backup, 17% of staff, UiPath, 6% of staff, Yotpo, 9% of staff, SimilarWeb, 10% of staff, Morning Brew, 14% of staff, Capitolis, 25% of staff, Chili Pepper, 20% of staff, Orchid, 27% of staff. We have BlockFi that has laid off all of their staff. I'm kind of concerned I have money on BlockFi that I need to get. Candy Digital, 33% of staff, and Wonder, 7% of staff. And the number 1 city, I'm sure no one is shocked to hear this, is the Bay Area. Yes, I get it. It's not a city, it's an area, but there's so many sub-cities in there that let's just consider it a city. California is number 14 of credit card debt with $6,736. Now, the housing market in the Bay Area year over year has dropped 40.8%. It's up there with Los Angeles in the housing crash. So clearly, California is going to be struggling with the cost of housing, and I'm sure the number of people getting laid off is going to affect that. Now, the Bay Area has been an official tech hub since the early 1990s, and they have experienced 2 other tech bubble bursts. So this could be possibly the 3rd one. Starting off with Brightline, 30% of staff, Jim, 33% of staff, Oracle, only laid off 200 people. I'm not even sure if that's 1%. Upstart, 7% of staff, Iron Ox, half of staff got laid off. ChangeB, 10%, Chime Bank, a startup darling, 12% of staff, Open Door Real Estate, 18% of staff, Studio, some random company, I don't know, SnapDocs, 15% of staff, LiveRamp, 10% of staff, Affirm, 1% of staff, and Shippo, 20% of staff. Those past 4 companies pay a lot of money to recruiters to hire people, so I'm sure that they're laying off recruiters right now. Lyft, 13% of staff, Stripe, 14%, Twitter, a little over half of the staff got laid off. Zendesk, their 2nd layoff. The last one happened in June. This time they laid off 5% of staff. Salesforce has had their 2nd layoff with 1% of staff. The last one was just in October. Astra, 16% of staff. Ring Central, their 2nd layoff. The first one was in September, laid off 10% of staff. Corsa, unknown amount of staff. Liftoff, 15% of staff. Meta, 13% of staff, which is 11,000 people. Wavely went out of business. SoundHound, 10% of staff. Coinbase, 1%. Influx Data, 27%. Jewel, 30%. Wave, a real estate company, 30%. Cloudinary, 8%. Gonna jump in there and say that I said earlier this year that cloud and data technology would be the safest place for you to take your job, and I was kind of wrong, kind of right. I'm seeing a lot of vendors that do data or cloud services, either, cloud hosting, cloud automation, data analytics, data aggregation. A lot of these companies are laying off, but I do see a ton of hiring posts for people who have cloud background or a data background. So there is a chance that there was a lot of people working in these types of jobs at specialty vendors that may be getting laid off. But I'm still going to say that I think cloud and data engineering is going to be the future. There's way more people with front-end skills that are looking for jobs right now than, say, a data engineer. Now, data scientists, you know that you are in a different group, and I would say that your job is probably more at risk now, but I'm going to keep what I said with cloud engineers and data engineers. You have a more stable future than other people. Next, we have Intercom, 13%, Captivate IQ, 10%, Protocol went out of business, Product Board, 20% of staff, Asana, 9% of staff. That's a large company. Kite went out of business, Cisco laid off 5% of staff, Roku, 7% of staff, Synthego, 20% of staff, Muro, 20% of staff, Netera unknown, NXC 40% of staff, Fireworks 18%, Codexes 18%, Bitfront out of business, Elastic 13% of staff, Kraken 30% of staff, and DoorDash 6% of staff, which is like 1,200 people. As you can see, the Bay Area, number one, all these startup names that are difficult to say, I can see why you're laying off, but there's a ton of startups laying off in the Bay Area. So clearly that area is going to struggle. We are going into a recession, and this is not just a local national recession. The entire globe is going through a recession. Another place I saw a ton of layoffs happening in the startup market was actually Indonesia. The capital of Indonesia had like 10 or 11 up there with Boston at the number of companies laying off. So this is not just something that's happening to Western countries. The startup bubble burst is affecting the world, and I think clearly these top 5 cities are going to struggle with the price of housing, the increase of debt, and difficulty getting a new job. Now, I do want to say, since Elon Musk has made all of Twitter come back on site, I think there's going to be a shift and change in attitude towards remote. A lot of these larger companies like Cisco, Amazon, whatever, I think they're going to be inspired by Elon Musk. Even the CEO of Netflix called Elon Musk brave. Well, he's definitely brave to make all these remote people come on site and risk losing them, because let's be real, everyone loves to work remote. No one wants to get dressed every single day to be around people that they didn't choose necessarily to be around every single day. Everyone loves remote. Well, except for leadership. Leadership doesn't really like remote, and there's several reasons. One being, it's hard to foster people into leadership if they're remote. It's hard to monitor monitor employees if they're getting work done. Consistently, I've seen this in multiple companies that remote workers do not perform as high as those who come on site. That is not really a negotiable thing, and I understand if you're remote, you want to argue with me, but the facts are the facts that remote workers often don't produce as much. Now, of course, there's going to be a ton of remote workers that would do the same amount of work, remote or in office, but too many companies have been burned by the overworkers, people trying to get multiple remote jobs and slacking. That's a lot more common than you probably think, but that's definitely burned these companies and hurt the reputation of remote. But this is the layoff video for November. I did the first week of November because I was so surprised. I don't expect as many layoffs going on in December, mainly because companies just paid a ton of employees to not work for Thanksgiving, and they're looking at paying employees to not work for Christmas too. And often people are taking vacation during these times, so you just don't see a ton of layoffs happening in December. There will be a few straggler companies who realize, oh no, the economy is changing, and will suddenly try to lay off in December, but I would expect this spike to increase again in January as new budgets come out, or as the reality of the recession that we're coming into becomes more common knowledge around the public. Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to my channel if you want to be up to date with tech news. Let me know if you appreciate me laying out the debt amount in each one of these cities, and I'll see you in the next one.